Evership 2 by Evership. Yeah, I couldn't think of anything to put into the intro, so I just decided to skip it this time. Sorry. So, Evership is a very interesting band for me. Pretty much helmed by Shane Atkinson, who worked a lot behind the scenes. I covered a little bit of the backstory when I did their first album, which is just a self-titled Evership. And Shane Atkinson was a lot of the behind-the-scenes individual for music. He did a lot of producing, he did a lot of mixing, he did a lot of mastering. And in 2016, he released his own project, which was Evership. And this was kind of a conglomeration of works that he had been doing over the past like 10 to 15 years. And the overall project of the first Evership album was really, really interesting and really unique in that it captured a lot of those feels and techniques of the past, but modernizing them and using technologies of the present. So I really like that kind of dichotomy that this band was able to have, because a lot of these songs originated way back when, but then brought through the guise of the modern era. And I was always kind of curious and interested to see how they would follow this up, how Shane would be able to follow this up. Like, was this going to be a complete departure of sound because now we're moved past there? Or has he taken bits and pieces from the past works that didn't quite make it onto the first Evership album, polished them up, and brought them in here? And it is still, like, it does feel very similar to that. Luckily, my worries were unfounded, as the two sound very whole. They sound very unified. Now, that isn't to say that this sounds exactly like the first album. There's a lot of moving forward of sound and going through with some pretty heavy stuff. I want to talk about some of the drawbacks first, just to kind of get them out of the way. And the first is the first two tracks of The Serious Room and Monomyth. These two tracks do feel as though they're the two weaker tracks. They're a little bit more heavy in tone. They're a little bit more bombastic. They feel very present. And that's, like, it's weird to think of this as like a downside. And I'll get to why when I'm talking about some of the great things about this album. But The Serious Room was actually recorded live, which has a lot of that energy. And I think that really helped us within the overall presentation of the album. Having that live energy permeate this song really helps us through. So we have that really hard-hitting, very complex, and what I like about this, even though I'm talking about the down points, but I do want to get it out of the way, I like the fact that it feels both very neo-prog, because that's the label that it's been given, but also very retro-prog. And like, if we had a Venn diagram of the techniques of a neo-prog and a retro-prog, this would be like the overlap of the two circles. This would be like perfect between the two. But yeah, The Serious Room and Monolith, I think the biggest drawback, and this is one that I want to talk about right now, is the carryover between the movements within the songs and the transitions between them. I think Shane still needs to work a little bit just within the transitions between the pieces, because there is a lot of go stop and go stop. This is definitely found within Monomyth, as well as the huge track of Isle of the Broken Trees. Within the Isle of Broken Trees, again, it's that handling of the transitions between the pieces. I feel like it doesn't really hand the baton over between pieces very much, as it does kind of like, I don't want to say it like drops the baton and the other side has to kind of pick it up, but it does feel very similar to that. And I feel like the transitions need to be worked on just a little bit more. And while we're talking about the Isle of the Broken Trees, this is the 28-minute Goliath. In some respects, I love it. Like, I love the long drawn out pieces. It allows Shane to really stretch his legs and have like a really nice flow to it. Allows the lead guitarist of James Atkinson, I believe that's his brother, kind of come to the forefront and play around a little bit within the sandbox. I do feel like the song took a little bit too long to get into the main part. Like, the first couple of parts, like within the 7 minutes of the more somber and slow and humble portion of it, I think they needed to move beyond it a little bit sooner than they did. I feel like it just was used to elongate the song a little bit more. And a couple of the playouts in the midpoint, I feel like they were kind of bashing up against different techniques and they didn't quite know which one to go with. Like there's a lot of that raging part, there's a lot of that really heavy hitting part, but then they would move back into the somber part and the more subdued part and not really know the proper balance between the two. I will admit, like the end play out within the guitar work, it was fine, but I don't know if it justified the runtime. Like whenever you're doing these long stretches of song, you need to really make sure that you stick that landing. And it's a good landing, it's just I don't know if it quite stuck it as heavy as the song makes it out to be. So let's talk about the real highlights on this. And that's the two middle tracks, Real or Imagined and Wanderer. Real or Imagined by far is my favorite track on this. I love this track. I feel like James' guitar work, when I was first listening to it, it was channeling so hard that George Harrison guitar work that it felt like the sequel to Dear Prudence. Like it's got that same smooth ebb and flow, very acoustic, and it really takes its time. And that's what I really like about this. And this is almost why I wish like Castaway Part 1 of Isle of Broken Trees was just a standalone song, because of how just solid Real or Imagined beginning was. And then I like the build, and this is another part of the Bataan pass off between pieces. We move from the very soothing guitar piece into the more heavy hitting one. I feel like they should have just gone straight into the heavy hitting part without having that kind of small buildup that they had within it. It does kind of weaken the blow a little bit. That's just a small criticism, and the more I'm listening to it, the more I'm enjoying it. And then when we finally get to that great playout where we have that Real or Imagined, I really enjoy that playout. I feel like they channeled exactly what they wanted it to be and nailed that finish. And Wanderer I really enjoyed as well. It's not quite as on the peak as Real or Imagined, but I do like how it starts off that slow and it builds up. And this is one of the few tracks where I feel like that transitions between pieces really did it effectively and did it well. And I really enjoyed how they were able to handle all that. So overall, Evership 2 was a delight. I really enjoyed it, and coming off of the heels of such a strong debut album, that second album is always kind of hit and miss. Either it's going to be amazing or it's going to fall flat, and in this case, it was definitely an amazing treat. I will definitely say this is one that I would pick up in physical format easily. It deserves to be in your collection if you're a fan of the neo-prog, if you're a fan of the retro-prog. Shane definitely shows that he's got the chops to be where he is within his musical career, and I'm only looking for better things in the future. That's about it. That's it for Evership 2 by Evership. What did you guys think? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Whatever you thought, let me know by commenting down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.